Thank you for obviously joining me on this episode. Sean, please could you give me a quick elevator pitch on Lessen?
Yeah. So, hi, Gemma. Good to see you. In a nutshell, Lessen is an intelligent operating platform for property services. So, we look to combine purpose-built software and AI, property data, and operational excellence across a nationwide network to deliver end-to-end repair, maintenance, and capital projects for residential and commercial portfolios.
Amazing, thank you. And talk to me a little bit. This is going to be a very long answer, I'm sure, but can you give me an overview on the business's journey to date?
Yeah, I
Big
can try.
question.
Yeah, I'll keep this condensed for purpose of the podcast, but Lesson as the entity known today has been around for about 6 years. Started by Jay McKee about 6 years ago. We did acquire a company called SMS Assist now about 3 years ago. SMS Assist had been around for, at the time we acquired them, about 15 years. So we have collectively about 20 years of experience under the belt of a company that's technically 6 years old today. Both firms were generally serving residential and commercial clients doing similar work, but the combination brought together a lot more data, a lot more technology, and again, just a lot more density in both types of clients to sort of help improve our value proposition to clients.
Yeah. And you joined 2 years ago, wasn't it?
Almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
And where was the business at then compared to now?
So we're almost a year, about a year into the acquisition from SMS. So I would say we were still sort of bringing together those two teams, right? Like while we did similar work, we did have different clients. We had sort of somewhat unique cultures, and we were still on that journey of how do we bring these two,
Mm.
racehorses together to run
How do
together?
you merge it to make sense?
Yeah, without damaging anything. Obviously, the team took on a good amount of debt and believed a lot in it, but we don't want to damage what you had. And so we were definitely still working through that to where we're at now. I think we've done a good job really bringing all those teams, the technologies, the process, the data all together, so we can serve clients a little bit more better under that one brand. There's no more confusion of, is this an SMS Assist operations team or a Lessen
It's
sales
more
team? It's everyone is Lessen out
consistent.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned the data, which I hear a lot in the property maintenance space. You mentioned the data being one of the main benefits of the acquisition. Like, would you mention anything else there at all?
Yeah. So for us, obviously, Gemma, you do a lot of these. You probably hear a lot of people talk about AI. You just were at a trade show where everything's AI. We think
Yeah.
AI is very powerful. We've built some tools. We've used some public tools. But actually, our CTO, Jay-Z, has a good way he phrases this is, the LLMs are getting pretty good, but they're like an engine, and the engine's only as good as the fuel you
Yeah.
put into it. So we feel our data is the fuel we get to put into our
The
engines. And
superpower.
yeah, and the unique thing about our data is it's not just observing work being done, but it's actually us having done the work. So we understand the context of, it said X on the way in.
Yeah.
What did Y on the way out actually look like? And what are all those different variants that can happen? So we think that really helps inform whether it's an AI tool or just different software process, whether it sits on the front end of ingesting work and triaging it or the back end of project managing and QCing it. We just sort of understand that whole process.
Yeah, I understand that. And I'm growing to understand that property maintenance is arguably becoming one of the largest segments in property technology and prop tech. And you guys, Lessen, are one of the most influential leaders in the space. Why do you think that Lessen have excelled compared to others?
So to your point, there's a macro shift. When prop tech first started a few years ago, there was definitely the resident amenity or the getting the person into the vacant unit was very interesting because rents were growing, occupancy was high, and so the need for technology, if you could produce just a little bit of improvement there was a big benefit to NOI. Nowadays, right, you're seeing a world where rents may be flat to down depending on the market, and you're fighting to keep people in your space because there's been a bunch of new supply. And so this
Mm,
shift in focus of how do I run the building more efficiently has become important. And that's
yeah,
luckily where we've built this expertise. So a little bit of right place, right time. But then
yeah,
again, we've served, if we just think about the residential space today, we serve a multitude of different types of residential clients. We serve single family rentals,
Yeah.
multifamily, manufactured housing. So while there's similar needs across a lot of them, there's also nuances to each, and they're all going through this same challenge. And so as they look for someone to augment their on-site teams, their technology, the process, we can step in and really be that trusted partner, versus just a point solution that may just be a point of software, which is great. But if you say hire a piece of software, you still have to train your team. You still have to hope the team uses it. When you hire us, you're hiring more of that outcome, right? Like we're going
Yeah.
to work with your team and use our tech and our process to deliver a certain outcome that's typically focused around driving higher efficiency and cost to maintain in that portfolio.
Yeah. And are the approaches to each different segment quite different, would you say?
They can be. Again, there's nuances. So if you start at a high level between residential and commercial, commercial, for example, where we have clients in the banking sector, distribution, retail, healthcare, we that space, you tend to have buyers that are very used to already buying outside services. So they're augmenting their teams today. They're buying off the shelf software. They're thinking of things like preventive maintenance programs. Like these are part of the conversations they have. Residential, it's I think a little bit newer for them. Like they're used to being able to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Some of the spaces like multifamily, they've bought software for a while. Some of the spaces like single family, they had to build
Yeah.
the first gen of software themselves, and they're just now starting to think of, do I buy versus build? Right. So some nuances in where the customer's at in their perspective. But at the end of the day, they all do use external partners and they all generally have needs that are evolving. And so there's an opportunity to engage with them.
Yeah, and I guess aside from that, when it comes to the technology with Lessen, like what would you say is the real competitive advantage there? Would you say is the differentiator the technology, the vendor network, the operational processes, the data that you mentioned before?
Yeah, I'd argue it's a collection of all of them, right? I think, Gemma, if I pull out one, one could be a very strong moat by itself, but when you're able to interweave all those, that's again sort of why someone hires us is not just because we have 40 million data points, or we did 3.5 million work orders last year, or have 30,000 people in the field. It's the fact that when you combine all those and we can talk to a client and say, okay, what's your cost to maintain? How do you want to serve your residents? And we can come together with a plan that delivers that outcome at a better cost to maintain. That's sort of the secret sauce that brings everything together. So there's great parts about our tech. There's things that we've been innovative on, how we built that technology, again, how we collected the data, how we evolve our workflows. But I think the real uniqueness to Lessen and why we stand out in the residential and commercial space is because we can bring all those together into an outcome for a client.
Yeah. And you mentioned 30,000 vendors. Obviously, that sounds incredibly difficult to manage. How do you guys maintain quality control at that scale?
Yep. Well, we've do rely on our tech a lot. So our tech does things when it's out there that sound very standard today, but stuff we've been doing for years where, we make the techs check in. We know where they're at. They can't check into a job early. We can put out workflows they have to follow. They have to take photos. It can be before, during, after, then implemented AI tools that will scan the photos and see what work's done. We've also implemented tools that will scan the photos against the scope of work. So we can understand you were supposed to do X. Did you actually do X? Did you do less than X, more than X?
Wow.
We use the AI tools to help facilitate communication between the on-site resident, the owner operator, and the technician. So we can drive more efficiency there. So yeah, we've built a lot, and then we just have a good team of people. We have this obviously leadership part in the operations team that has years of experience, if not decades, sort of overseeing this. We have an internal team called SME, subject matter experts. They're the ones that when the AI tool sees something, it flashes to someone who's an expert in HVAC or plumbing or electrical so that they can review it and understand, well, did you actually do the right thing here? Did you add work to it, not because you're just trying to make a higher bill, but because you needed to get that done to achieve the outcome. If that's the case, that saved me a second trip later. That actually reduced the total cost to fix that. Even if it made that individual work order a little more expensive because I saved that second trip cost. So there's a secret to inside that definitely relies on the person along with the technology.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting as well, because obviously we hear a lot that AI is like kind of replacing things, but it sounds like it's very much kind of standardizing and making the workflow much more efficient, but you've still then got the kind of human element behind it that's still doing the quality control, which is important. But I guess it all just kind of speeds it all up.
Yeah, both to our clients and to our internal teams, we see AI not as a replacement for the human, but an augmentation for the human.
Yeah.
So it can free them up to do other high value things. It can just make them more efficient in what they're doing today, or a combination of both. But
Yeah.
it's a
It's not
tool.
replacing.
Yeah, it's not replacing. It
Yeah.
helps. Don't get me wrong. And we've driven efficiencies of revenue per employee. We've been able to scale that really well, but that's because we've been able to not also hire other heads we would have thought we needed 2 or 3 years ago, and just utilize the team we have better.
Okay, and just whilst we're on the topic of all of that, you launched AI products like Copilot and Aiden. What specific problems were you trying to solve there?
Yeah, so Copilot and Aiden are actually the same product. We rebranded it. Copilot was the original
Oh,
name for it.
got you.
Um, and the team thought Aiden humanized it a little bit better. Fun story behind it. It's like AI den, right? So AI in a home.
Oh,
Um,
okay, I got you.
yeah, but like some of the things when we first launched those, they were very resident and tenant and
Yeah, I
customer
guess it's not
facing.
inclusive of whatever, yeah, sectors you serve as well.
Yeah, but we were trying to solve for that intake challenges at first. So now today, Aiden ingest work. I think last stats I saw were about 95% from a priority accuracy and 97% from a trade
Wow.
accuracy. So
Mm.
that's it, intaking, whether it's email, chat, or phone, it's able to be that accurate. So again, there's a human element sometimes of looking at those nuances, and then obviously down the line, but we can intake in with those levels of precision. Today's a little bit more than 80% of the time we do a job, a human actually never has to touch it until the human in the field does the work.
Interesting.
So solving those problems at first where we focused our AI efforts, but again, now we've deployed Aiden across, how people are monitoring and managing assets that we're touching. So we're helping to make recommendations on repair versus replace, depending on age of asset, what we're seeing from similar assets in the field. And again, some of those tools we'll use Aiden for in the back end of project management, watching what work's being done, QCing work, facilitating communication, all those things the AI tools are able to help with now.
Pretty much you wouldn't be able to survive without it.
Yeah, it definitely helps us out a lot and helps the team focus on the things that are more impactful for them to spend their time on.
Yeah. And how long would you say you've actually been using AI in your workflows? Because that the stuff it's doing sounds huge and obviously a huge advantage for you guys. How long would you say you've been using that over the years?
I mean, we've used technology since SMS started in this space years ago. They built a lot of good technology. They built the original framework for what we call One that Aiden is on top of, our platform One. And then as part of Lessen, right, we spend about 20 million a year on R&D, just continue to invest in that technology. So I would tell you, tech's always been important. AI, as AI is thought of today, we've been utilizing for about 2 years.
Okay, wow. And what parts of the maintenance life cycle would you say is still pretty difficult for AI to solve? Is there anything that it can't do?
I mean, today there's no AI robot that goes out and fixes a toilet or fixes your electrical wiring. I know there's some startups in the
Can't do
prop tech
that.
space that want to solve that. I personally think that's going to be a tough one, just a lot of nuances in the real world when you're out there to fix something. So I think that one's a long way out. Um, Across the other parts of the journey to get there, the AI in the front end, the intake, when you think of the intake and triage, has actually become very accurate and also very speedy and very humanized. So 6 months ago, you probably knew when you were talking to an AI agent. I actually got fooled in a hotel about 3 months ago, earlier this year. It was pretty good, and it even dealt well with me trying to mess with it afterwards, like asking it for chocolate chip cookies at 10 o'clock
That's
at night.
hilarious.
Yeah, so I think some of it's really accelerating fast and is very impactful. And then some of the stuff you can do when the AI agent actually is just helping people solve problems the way they want to solve them. So one of the ways we get excited is, today there's a lot of money and time spent when you think of UI design. Like, how do I build this software for Gemma, you and your team to understand what to do and where to do it, but you all have different perspectives and experiences. One of the fun things of AI is now I can switch this fixed UI concept to just a conversation. So you can show up today and say, Aiden, tell me about which of my properties are having HVAC issues greater than the average for the last 3 months. And then you can dive into it. You can ask it to chart things for you. And it's all just real time right there in front of you, solving what you need in the moment versus making you look at a static screen and then figuring out, where do I go to find this info, right? So it's shifting to that, aiding in that shift to problem solving versus just displaying data.
Yeah, I get that. So I wanted to pick your brains on some different kind of industry specific topics. What is one operational mistake you see repeatedly across the industry? And we can say specific to property maintenance as well.
Oof. There's a couple of different things. I mean, I'm gonna pull it back to some of the technology thing. If you talk to a lot of operators or owner operators, there's been in the last 3 years, 4 years, a lot of investment in general technology around the life cycle of a building.
Mhm.
And some of these tools are very valuable and can be very impactful, but then there's the human element, right? Is the team trained on it? What's the risk management? Are they actually using the tools? So I do think one gap that exists is the assumption that just because you buy a system and implement it, that it's going to deliver exactly the same
Yeah.
outcome, right? You have to focus on that change management. That's one. There's also been a realistic shortage of skilled labor since COVID, right? Like you've had technicians that just decided to retire. There's not a big enough supply of them coming back in to fill those gaps. Given some of those macro changes we talked about at the beginning, there's a higher demand for them. So you
Mhm.
have tradespeople, in-house technicians that can start a job, 3 months later get paid more and easily just
Yeah.
swap over. And so that creates this friction that you're trying to manage because you're trying to take care of the buildings. These people also are a face of the company to the resident. So they're trying to help people do move-ins, take care of small things, show them how to fix things themselves. And we don't have that. Again, in a world where occupancy was high and rent was growing, you maybe not didn't focus on it. But in a world today where someone has a bad experience in their first month of living in a unit, that
Yeah.
has a very high correlation to them moving out 11 months later when their lease is due. And so
Yeah.
that sort of human element, both on the implementation training side and just the recognizing the reality of um, the scarcity of some of the labor that does this work today and how do you best
Yeah.
maximize the utility from that, I think is important.
Yeah, and also if there's a big kind of scarcity of the labor, but also I think as soon as anyone has an inconvenience these days, they're just quick to say, oh, well, I know it's this easy to get a repair
Yes.
or someone in to sort it out. So it's like a huge demand from people within the buildings, but like where are the people to actually deliver it? So that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
We still, a lot of people today still focus on cost per work order as the metric. And then they may also focus on speed. They may also look at a quality rating. So those are generally your three. But the cost per work order is a metric we've been trying to influence and change around because, again, a work order may cost you $50 less, but if you have to do it 2 times or 3 times to actually complete the job, that total cost to maintain wasn't the right choice.
Mm.
It's so how do you shift the focus of the person approving the work, managing the work in the moment to say, I actually want to spend 50 or $100 more because they'll get it done on one trip versus multiple trips. I have to go back and forth, or again, maybe it takes longer, then you have an unhappy resident that affects your retention later. So there's this balance, but I think that shift from a cost per work order to a cost to maintain
Mhm.
is a change that's starting to happen in the industry, but that's a shortcoming I think we have today.
Yeah. And like what trends are you watching most closely and you're keen to kind of get onto?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's trends from like the just client usage of it. I do think more and more, how do you um, help their on-site teams maximize their efficiency and maximize their value add is important. I do think this wave of AI is also back to this sort of software stack is encouraging some operators to rethink their buy versus build decision um, from a technology standpoint. So one thing we're trying to do is figure out, again, we want to help people achieve an outcome. That doesn't mean you have to use my entire tech stack to do so. So if you have another piece of software you built or bought, um, I want to find a way to work with that piece of software and augment that software as well as the people to help deliver an outcome. So that's a big trend we're trying to keep an eye on and working with clients, and just how is that tech stack evolving, and how do we sort of meet clients where they need us to be. And then don't forget, there's a lot of data centers being built, so there's an end customer evolution that's really exciting to us, that we want to keep watching things like that and just see new opportunities. And I think this change, this macro change of the operational focus, there was a period of time maybe a year ago, I think people are optimistic that 2026 would have a different feel to it. I think where we're at today with interest rates and just the economy, the reality is this sort of operational efficiency focus will be here for a while. And so you're seeing people, I think the mindset change from a, how do I make this happen for 18 to 24 months, to how do I make this happen for the next 3 to 5 years, and really ingrain this in my organization.
Yeah, I got you. And let's talk about, in your journey specifically, what's been the hardest operational problem you've solved in the last 2 years?
I mean, one of the fun challenges was when I joined Lessen, lots of opportunity, lots of excitement. But again, we were bringing together different processes, different teams, different personalities. And so going through that and figuring out, how do we identify simple things like, what's the right ICPs for us? Who are the clients we want to serve more of? Like, there was a lot of different opinions when we first went into that based on just historical experience and what people brought to the table. Figuring that out, figuring out how do we structure ourselves right, operationally, to serve those clients. Which parts of the tech stack do we prioritize investing in to serve those clients? Lessen being 6 years old still has a lot of the spirit and fire of a startup that's 6 years old. But again, doing 3.5 million work orders last year, we also carry the size and scale of a bigger org. And so we have to balance this. What do we want to do versus what do we need to do, and what's the right way to do it? And so bringing all that together has been a fun opportunity for me, and I think the Lessen team over the last 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an incredible journey for sure. This might be interesting. In 5 years' time, what's one thing Lessen will be doing that it isn't today?
So I think that you'll see again a lot more of this shift of the technology being more natural in how you use it. So whether that's asking for a dashboard, whether that's, and there's some technology startups out there doing this today where, they're ingesting photos or video or other things and just able to on their own contextualize it and understand. So I think you'll see a lot more of that. Let's just call it natural interaction with the technology versus a keyboard and a mouse, that I think will be beneficial. And then I think for us also, there's things, or maybe for me, my geek side comes out. I do think there'll be things that we get to leverage more and more that do touch some of the physical space more. So drones that scan rooftops, drones that do surveys after a storm, other things like that that can bring data in that's very contextually relevant to us, so we can again help a client in that moment say, here's where you have an issue.
See it before it's reported, kind of thing. How interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we get, when there's an event today, we have teams that will mobilize and get on site, but that still takes some time. And then you start to figure out what's safe, how can you go look at things. So I think a lot of that hard tech will be very beneficial, especially in emergency situations. And then I think there's more and more data. If I combine where Lesson's at to my previous life in IoT with Point Central, I think people are finally starting to see some of the value of having all these sensors out there, and they're starting to see the bigger picture of, if I can bring this together, this data can help inform me on reactive versus preventive maintenance, and where do I invest, what type of maintenance strategy or CapEx strategy I need. I think all that data is starting to become relevant and realized to the operators who invested in. Value. Yeah, it's taken a while because people have invested in those for 3, 5, 7 years. But that operational side of the value of the data, I think, is starting to come forward. And I think in 5 years will be a part of the everyday decision making versus being on the fringe today.